that means specific. I'm just going to keep going with this naming
Just going to
protest.
keep on doing that.
As always, at the controls, the headmaster of the Chameleon Academy, Bill Strand, and I'm your host, Sean McZoo, also known as Sean McNeely. Um, Today, we're going to talk about Caresheets. Wow, my notes are kind of all over the place. But anyways, we're going to talk about Caresheets, but we're going to first talk about some announcements. Um, it's been about 14 weeks since I've had a stroke. I'm not having one now, but it seems like I'm a little bit off today. Um, I'm getting much better. I do appreciate everyone's thoughts and prayers, and I'm going to continue to keep working ahead. Um, we can find us on Facebook at the Chameleon Enthusiast, the Reptile Enthusiast, and Exotic Pet Adventures. We need more participation in NEPA. So we've got about 100 there, but we need more. Instagram, the Chameleon Academy, the Reptile Entrepreneur, McZoo Exotic Pets, and Vero, which is a different, an old-fashioned Instagram. It's like it's a real picture type based information sharing tool, I guess. I'm at McZoo Exotic Pet Adventures, and Bill's at Bill Strand, so you can find him there. Twitter, I'm at Sean McZoo. Pinterest, I'm at McZoo Exotic Pets. Do you have a Twitter and a Pinterest, Bill?
Nope.
Nope. I don't know. All right. So do we
I
have?
got enough with Instagram and YouTube,
Mhm.
Vero.
Yeah, I think the ideal way is to have them, like I've got my Instagram going to my Facebook. So you post on Instagram and you get it on your Facebook so that you don't have to do 2 posts a day. So, anyways, those are reels. But nonetheless, any homework for this weekend, Bill?
There isn't. I am actually taking. It's not accurate to say I'm taking a week off, but there's not going to be a show this weekend. And
Wow.
yeah, well, I will make up for it by the show a week from Friday.
Mhm.
There was a time. There's a point where I said, "Hey, you know what? This is going to take more than a week to put together, and I want to do this one right." So,
Okay.
well,
So what is the
you get the
topic?
weekend off.
Are we going to hear the topic, or we just have to
No,
wait till?
actually, you don't get the weekend off because you have to you have to do some proofreading and
Uh-oh.
review.
Yikes. All right.
That's right, you guys. Everybody else takes the weekend off, and we're going to be talking about Jackson's Chameleons.
Hmm. Great.
And more
Awesome.
than just talking about it, we are going to do a comprehensive review.
All right. I hope
And
there's a
I'm going
care
to
sheet
be
involved.
announcing I'm going to be releasing the new care summary for 2022.
So it's not a sheet, it's a summary. Why is that?
It's a little bit more than a sheet.
Yipes. I got my work for me cut out for this weekend. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right. All right. So
Hello,
I'll be looking
Stephanie.
forward to that. All right. So let's talk care sheets.
Uh,
Um,
Appropriately.
all right. So Bill, where do you find care sheets?
Okay, so this is the very interesting situation that we find ourselves in these days. And like 20 years ago, the challenge was finding care sheets. The challenge today is to figure out which of the 10 care sheets that are going to come up you actually want to follow. And so we are in the age of excessive information. So the finding of a care sheet, that's no problem at all.
Well, okay. So the breeder, Facebook, websites, that's where you're looking, or where we should be looking?
Well, if you're asking me where you should look
Mhm.
and how do you tell, I mean, the question that boils down to is where do you find a quality care sheet that you really want to use?
Mhm.
Because you've got these 10 care sheets. And if you knew what you were talking about, you wouldn't be looking for a care sheet. So, how do you, as somebody who knows nothing, going to figure out which one you should look at? And I've been working with chameleons for decades, and I know the lay of the land. I can pull up Google and I can tell you all of the websites that are garbage, and the ones that are good. And Unfortunately, the ones that are good are sometimes on the second or third page,
Mhm.
uh, because I know the lay of the land. You get me into, say, crested geckos, Leachianus, dart frogs, or any of these others, and all of a sudden, I am back to square one. I don't know the lay of the land. I don't know anybody. I don't, and I can do care sheets, bringing them up. That is exactly what happened with my emerald tree boa. I started pulling up care sheets and realized I don't know these people. I don't know who who to look for. And so, uh, who wishes the Spruce Pets website would just go away? I don't know who is that because Facebook doesn't tell us your name, but yeah, they've
Mhm.
tried Googling. They know I yes, you're right. Spruce Pets. Oh man,
Wait a
they
minute.
do so good with
The internet
SEO.
isn't all true, Bill? It isn't 100% true? I don't
Well,
understand.
I you see, so everybody, the problem is that oh, Tom, that was from Tom. Yes.
Always here, Tom.
Yeah, see, the problem is that those large companies like Spruce Pets or Petco, PetSmart, and these larger names, they have teams that are marketing teams that are very good at SEO, and that's getting themselves placed on Google because that's their job. That is what they do. They're not necessarily reptile people. And so their focus is on that marketing team and that social media team. And then they have people go out and just grab information, and these people who are grabbing information from everything from hedgehogs to iguanas to goldfish, they're not experts in that animal. All they're doing is going in and just grabbing things from other websites, putting it together, and saying, okay, this is our care sheet. Um, and so what you're getting is a conglomeration of whatever they can find. And this isn't to say that everything that they find is wrong or bad. What I'm saying is they don't know,
Mhm,
and you don't know, because whenever somebody doesn't have the experience, then they are trusting in somebody else. And so now if you get a care sheet from somebody that doesn't have direct experience, you are trusting in their ability to to sort through all of this data and come up with the right information. And so it just starts to get a little weighty. And so
So
what
wait a minute. The person who can search engine optimize the best doesn't have the most information?
uh, they got they got the most information. How good of information that is. I mean, okay, for my chameleon world,
Mhm,
there's a number of chameleon sites that you can go to, and they have all of these articles about chameleons and these care guides and such. And you notice all of the products that they talk about are things you get off of Amazon. So they're doing the Amazon affiliate thing. But you look at their bio, and there's no mention of any chameleons. Okay, they had a chameleon 10 years ago, one chameleon 10 years ago, and they have been maintaining this website ever since. Where are they getting their information? Well, I know they grab stuff from the Chameleon Academy, then they grab stuff from wherever else, and they put something together that that allows them to sell their Amazon products.
mhm,
And so they are combining good information with mediocre information, and they're gluing it together with bad information. And so you get this hodgepodge there. And so, how do you tell? Well, research who it is who has made that website, who's made that care sheet. Do you have a name? If you don't have a name, that's a warning flag right there. If in the bio they talk about how they had one chameleon 10 years ago, warning sign.
mhm.
It doesn't mean the information that they've got is bad. It just means they don't know. And so it could be good, bad, who knows? And I think this is the skill that we all have to learn in this day and age is how to research the source for our information. And not to put too fine of a point on it, but you got people on Facebook that become experts because they started a group or they got inducted into a group and they memorized all the talking points. And now they talk authoritatively about all sorts of stuff. But when you look into their background, there's no experience there. All they did is memorize something from somebody else who probably memorized it, and it they exist in an echo chamber where you dispute them, well, you're kicked out. So it just snowballs on itself, and they become more and more confident on information that was just grabbed out of the air.
I
And
think
this is how
that
things happen.
reminds me of medical school, where they told us that knowledge without experience is the most dangerous time.
Yeah.
That when you had knowledge, your third year, when you had all the knowledge behind you but no experience, you were dangerous. You know, Hopefully we got a lot of experience the next 2 years, and in the last 20 years, I've gone from being dangerous to being helpful. But knowledge without experience is very dangerous. It's the best way to get yourself in trouble. It's the best way, and I even tell the students I'm working with that you have to have experience, that you can't just have knowledge, that it just doesn't work that way. But anyways, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think that's perfect. And let's define experience. Experience is with the animal. It's not saying the same thing ad nauseum over and over year after year. That's not experience.
Mhm.
And I have to say that because that is what social media ends up being. Because when you say the same thing over and over year after year, you become more and more confident in it. But if you don't have the animal and you're not trying it out, you're not trying out the limits of what you're saying. You got a false sense of authority there. Um,
Yeah, I think that the problem is that on Facebook or some of these other social media things, the loudest person has the most authority.
yeah,
Not the most knowledgeable. The people with experience leave because they're tired of listening to this other person who has no experience, and they walk away. I think that's what we've tried to do with the chameleon enthusiast, the reptile enthusiast, and even exotic pet adventures, is keep people who have experience, bring people up, teach them how to actually do things and do things right. But it still becomes an echo chamber. If someone doesn't say what you want to hear, you can always axe them out. And not that these sites are doing that, but there are people who do things like cohabbing chameleons. That's a horrible thing to do. There's no cohabbing of chameleons except for the little ones, but even then, they do better on their own.
yeah.
So if you're doing that, you don't know what you're talking about, and you don't have any experience. And even then, you can do it and do well in your mind, but your animals are suffering, and they might live 2 years instead of 5 or 10 or 15 years. And so
Yeah.
you think of yourself as a expert because you did it once, but proving it, without, when you don't do it and you see things are better, that's not the way to do things. So anyway.
And you know what I do when I need to research an animal, because I know exactly how care sheets work and I know how information gathering works. If I have to go and look for information on a new species that I'm just starting on ground zero with, I go and I see if there's a podcaster that talks about that animal. And I see if that podcaster has an interview style where they could bring people on, because podcasting is the number one media for self-challenging.
Mhm.
And the reason why I feel confident kicking people off of my Facebook group saying, get out of here, you don't know what you're talking about, is because uh, on a almost weekly basis, I am talking to other people and I
Mhm.
am getting the new ideas from around the world. I am constantly refreshing myself. As soon as I stop doing that and I start saying, okay, this information that I have is the end all be all, and I am done learning, that's when I start dying. That's when it starts becoming obsolete. And so I look for podcasters that do interview style. And you get a podcaster that's got 100 episodes and they've got guests through most of those episodes, you know that they have been exposed to all the ideas in the world, and they've had to reconcile those with what they do and what they believe. And so they are being sharpened every week. And that's really, I got to tell you, it's exhausting doing that, but it's exhilarating. But yeah, that's how I find my newest and best information.
And that's where I get some of my information from your podcast. It's awesome. I enjoy it, and I've been listening to it for years. And you do exactly that. You bring people on, and you challenge yourself. You challenge others, and you even bring groups of people on. And I think that that's a great way of doing it. Podcasting is a challenge. I've never really done a formal podcast, but I listen, and I've been a guest on podcasts before, and it's a challenge. It's you get challenged, you get questions, you can cut it up and make it sound all you want, but you pretty much don't you can't change the way the podcast goes. You can't change the information there.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can cut it up, and sometimes, as you listen to these political ads right now, that these things were cut up and made to sound the way they do. But those are obvious, and the same thing with
Yep.
podcasting. I think you can tell when people have cut out certain parts and added only what they wanted. So I agree that that's a great way to find it out. I Unfortunately, there's not enough podcasts out there
Yeah, we need more
for that part,
podcasters.
right? But you know, so now we know how to find a good care sheet. You've got a good author, someone you trust, someone who podcasts, someone who challenges themselves, someone that you can follow, someone who has a history on Facebook, has a
Mhm.
website, has all these different outreaches and has had it for a while. Didn't put it up last week. Doesn't have doesn't specialize in tortoises this week, and then specialize
Yeah.
in exotic other songs, the next week, and only that. So I mean, I have both tortoises and chameleons, but nonetheless, I'm not an expert in definitely not an expert in tortoises, not really even an expert in chameleons, and I think that's also the problem. When you start to think of yourself as an expert, you've made a mistake, because you don't have opportunity to be challenged. You think of yourself, like you said, as having all the information, and you're always learning. Once you stop learning, that's the end. And I think that's what you kind of said earlier, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's the same way.
it's really difficult, especially for established breeders, because they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. So they get really good at that one thing that they do over, and those techniques that they do over and over and over again. And because they have that breeder status, they're looked at as having expertise, which is absolutely true. If you are breeding, especially multiple generations, you have an expertise in that species. The problem is if you don't keep up with the what's going on in the world and you don't keep moving things forward, you end up being an expert in the husbandry that's a decade or two old.
Mhm.
And now you have a choice. Do you tell all the people who are looking to you as an expert, and do you say, hey, you know what? I'm growing, I'm changing, I'm trying out these new methods? Or do you end up uh, digging in and saying, no, what I've done has worked for 20 years. I'm going to keep doing it this way and I'm going to defend it against these stupid new ideas. Why do I need to do something different when this works? And so you have a choice. And I think you get a bit of a problem because when you start building up that kind of following and you become their leader, it's not as comfortable to let everybody know everybody who's following you know that someone else may have come up with something that made things that did things different. So there's a huge ego thing here that keeps a lot of experienced people back from being everything that they are. And I got to say, I completely understand that. and it is uncomfortable having to say, I need to change what I'm doing. And
But I
I've gone through that a couple of times.
but I respect those people most. You know, the people who don't say that they know everything, the people who don't actually accept that's the way we've always done it. Those are the people I respect most. I know that maybe I'm unique in that manner, but those are phrases that bother me. I know what I'm talking about. I'm an expert. I've done this for so many years. That is always dangerous. That's just like knowledge without experience. And it depends on what kind of experience you have. If you do the same thing over and over again for 50 years, um, think about what happened 50 years ago. Think about the cars we had. Think about the lack of phones. Think about the no internet. That wasn't even 20 years ago. Think about what's happened in 50 years. And so if you haven't changed in 50 years, you're doing it like 1970. That was 50 years ago. Wow. But you're not
Well,
really, what else you done? What were we doing when we were kids? I was 3 in 1970. What were we doing then that we're not doing now? All kinds of
I
stuff.
I gotta say, it's not necessarily that these established people don't want to change. It's that they feel threatened or don't like the person who comes up with the change element. And so it's completely politics, high school politics. And I mean, we in the chameleon community, we have that situation with nighttime hydration, naturalistic hydration and fogging. A number of people clashed with the loudest voice on that, and didn't want to accept it because they didn't want to allow that person to be right.
Mhm.
And yeah, I can. If someone offends you, you don't want to say, "Okay, yeah, but you're right." Uh, and it's just politics. It's easier to stick with what you've been doing.
I had a high school professor who always said, right is right, even if no one's right, and wrong is wrong, even if we're all wrong. And that's been the greatest advice that I've listened to for years and years. But that if it's right, it's right. It doesn't matter who came up with it. It doesn't matter where it came from. If it's right, it's right. So I follow that.
I remember I literally typed out the word, "I really don't like you. I'm disgusted with what you've done, but I respect you because you're right." That's the exact thing I typed out to a certain
Hopefully you didn't
individual.
send it that way. Hopefully you read it and reworked it. But you
Well,
never
I
know.
mean,
Maybe you did.
it's amazing what you can do when you separate the 2. You can say, "Okay, I have been incredibly offended, and I am very angry, but you're right." And so those 2, I'm going to allow those 2 to exist simultaneously. And I'm going to realize, okay, we can deal with the frustration and the anger, the disagreement, while we're also talking about, okay, I want to learn more about what you just said. And it's not easy to do that. You like to just let your emotions take over, but if you're really looking for information and you want to push yourself forward, you're not going to get along with everybody, or there's going to be friction. You've got a lot of the personalities that push things forward are aggressive. They are breaking things as they go, and so there's going to be conflict, and it's just part of the landscape.
All right. So now that we know how to find a care sheet, um, let's talk about how to use a care sheet.
Mm,
What is
mm.
a care sheet? A care summary or whatever. Is it a recipe? Do you follow it exactly? Do you mix them up? Do you take the best parts of each recipe from five
Yes,
different recipes and use it, and make something that's that's really disaster?
we have
Or
a lot of fun with this. When you go
um,
off, we get people, you go off and you find 10 care sheets, and then you pick and choose what you want off of those 10 care sheets and put together this Frankenstein and say, "Hey, it's not working." Well, what? what husbandry are you using? And you get this list of just a mishmash of everything that's out there. Hey, James is here. Hey.
Hey, James.
And James Cross, hello. And yeah, and the thing is, all of our husband is imperfect. We're to locate the outside in our living rooms with imperfect equipment, and so there's always some things that we have to reconcile. We have to make up for the deficiencies, and so we end up having this recipe that's a little unique, but we've made it work. And so you can have 5 different care sheets that have 5 different approaches that all work if you use all of those components as directed in that care sheet. But when you start mixing it with other care sheets, it's just not going to work. So, yeah, you got to decide which one you want to go with and just stick with one of the care summaries. That's
So
the
what?
only
You
way to
can't
do it.
put Jiffy Pop in the microwave and figure it out?
You can, but then we've got a, but then it gets really obnoxious when we start asking,
Causes
I'm
a
sorry, you're
fire.
doing
I
what?
understand. But I like to think of them as recipes, and I like to think of it as that way. My grandma was able to take recipes and combine them, separate them. She could subtract and add any ingredient, and she knew how to replace everything. But she had 90 years of experience.
Yeah.
That was information with experience. Those of us who don't have any experience and like to combine recipes end up doing something um, turns out to be an abomination, or at least isn't very tasty.
Uh-huh.
And so I think once you get the experience, you can start to judge your care sheets and try to combine things and do new things, and that's how you grow. But when you're starting out with a care sheet, I agree. Follow the whole thing exactly the way it says it, or don't follow it at all because you're not going to do good by the pet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of a follow-up to that, how do you use a care sheet? You use a care sheet just to get you set up. Once you get set up, then you've got to watch what your chameleon, your reptile does. What's their behavior? How are they reacting to how you've set it up? Because when people put together a care sheet, like I've been putting together care sheets for years, and I struggle over every single number because I have to figure out how is somebody going to implement this that is in totally different conditions than I am. I'm making a general care sheet that's going out to the world, and we have so many different environments. How do I make it as general as possible to be valid to as many people as possible? And so there's a lot of give and take that goes into these care sheets. And you got to realize when you use these care sheets, that it's just giving you a starting point. And then you need to judge based on your animal's behavior if you need to tweak any of those to make it unique to your situation, which is unique.
I think I first heard that from you, but that you just watch the behavior. You got to watch the behavior and see what happens. Even within a species, there are different animals. I have you know 10 Jackson chameleons. They all behave differently. They're all different. They have the similar setups, but I've tweaked each one for each individual. Um, just because that's the way they are. This one likes the bottom. This one likes the top. This one
Mhm.
likes to eat crickets out of a container. This one likes them to be free roamed. What have you. And you just have to keep an eye on it. And that's why, we were talking about one time before about how many uh, do you have and when do you say stop. And when you can't watch all of them and look at the individuals and see the difference between them and see how they're doing, then you have too many.
Mhm.
You have to understand, you have to accept that you have too many and you need to start paying better attention to them and getting rid of some of them because you will lose them that way. You'll start losing them. Things will go wrong. So that's very important that you watch each individual and the individuals, even like, you know, um, my tortoises live together. I got to watch all of them. I
Mhm.
came in today and my one tortoise was in the hide again for a second day. Now they're in and out of the hide, and but I just noticed that he was the one that was in the hide again for a second day when I walked in. And so I opened the hide and I looked in and I checked on him. I made sure he was okay because he's always out. And I needed I because I can tell them apart. If you can't tell them apart, you're not you're behind the game anyways. I
Yeah.
can tell, tortoises, redfoot tortoises all look alike, but they don't. Each of them are different. Each of them have their unique things. So, got to still keep an eye on them.
Yep. Yep. And and that's and I like to tell everybody that if you use my care summaries, I work so hard to put those numbers in there, but your chameleon is the expert. And if your chameleon says, Bill, I don't like Bill's numbers, well, then you do what your chameleon tells you. Because I mean, we all know that these reptiles, like you said, are individuals. I mean, I have some chameleons that they're more sensitive to UVB than others of their same species. And so I adjust. I don't say, no, you're getting UVI3, whether you like it or not. No, if you're down at the bottom of your cage, you don't like the UVB. All right, I either put another plant in there to block more UVB, or I move UVB so you only get a little bit, and you personalize it for your reptile.
I think that's kind of like the way there are different car colors or different things for humans that, if we all had one color, we wouldn't be happy.
Yeah,
And
if
I
you
know that these are not the same, that they haven't gotten up the evolutionary scale as far as we have, but it's still they're still within this whole species and what am I trying to say? They still have some of the same traits. They still have 96 or 97% the same DNA as we do. Um, there's got to be something within that DNA that tells them what they do, and that there's differentiations between each of them.
I think a perfect analogy is just look at your house when you have a family and the house is at a certain temperature. Some people are running around in shorts, some people are bundled up in a blanket, and other people are in between. So it's we're all running a little bit different at different times of our life, and so the chameleon is the same way.
Even different days. Some
Yeah,
days you feel too warm, some days you're doing well, and what have you. So let's see. Do we have any questions from anyone? We're not getting a lot of questions today. Um, Anyone out there want to ask us some questions about care sheets, or want to tell us where your favorite place of finding them are?
that's right. Any questions, comments, disagreements?
Anybody know who's going to win the game tonight? Anything like that? Who's going to win the World Series? We'd be happy to share.
Oh, well, while you all are trying to figure out what questions to ask, I'll tell you, it has been such a challenge putting together care sheets and figuring out how much information to put in. I mean, you look at like the website that I make, and there's just this wall of text there, text and pictures and illustrations and all that. And somehow I'm supposed to distill that down to just a couple of pages on a care sheet. That's a that's
A
a tall
couple of
order.
pages. It's a care sheet, not sheets.
Oh, you're only giving me one sheet,
I'm
one
only giving you one.
page.
Well, maybe one back and forth. I guess if
Oh,
if
okay. I
it's
get like two sides.
two sides, right? Now
Oh
it
boy.
cannot be, like 3 point font. It has to be, it has to be a reasonable font.
Oh
Somewhere in the 8 or 10.
man. Well,
But
my latest care summary, like my panther, that was what, 5 pages?
hmm
I'm kind of breaking the mold there.
yeah, you are. But that's what do we say? If you don't keep growing, you're dying.
That's
So
right. That's right.
it isn't the way we also used to do it, and you weren't the great expert. We aren't the experts that we should be. So I guess we can't challenge you on that.
Well, limit.
Even if
At
we like
what point?
even if we like you, we can't challenge you on that.
Uh, uh, Love to hear any funny feedback Bill has received from his care sheets. Oh, well,
he shares that with us in of his Facebook group, behind the scenes, so that we can all laugh. But go
I will
ahead.
tell you, I try to update my care sheets every year, but it ends up being every 2 years because my goodness, it's a lot of work. And the the reason why I have to update these, or the reason why I continue to update them, is not that the information changes, but the uh, I get feedback as to how people interpret the information, and I say, "Oh my goodness, how did they get that out of that?" And so I think the most challenging feedback is I somehow had to communicate that the basking lamp only needs to be on for as long as the chameleon needs it to be on. And so I have that graph on there that has this bar. It's got the times, 24 hours sections, and I have these bars that go across. And okay, the white light, the daylight goes from, I think it was what, 6 to 6, and this is when the misting is, and this is when the UVB is on. And so for the basking, I originally did it from uh, from 6 to 6. So I originally had the basking bar going all the way across for the day. But then I had people say, "Hey, I've got this hybrid cage and I put the basking lamp on and it gets too hot in the cage because the heat gets stored up. What do I do?" And I said, "Well, shut off the heat lamp." "What?" "Yeah, just shut off the heat lamp. You can do that." And oh yeah, because they were following that chart exactly. Now I have a whole website that explains every part of these care summaries. And so you go on the website, you're going to read that.
Wait a minute,
But
you're supposed to go on the website, you're not just supposed to look at the sheet?
this is the biggest challenge. How do you put all of that into a sheet? So then I got clever. Okay. So what I do is I cut the basking bar to only 2 hours. That should be enough, right? Right. Well, now I got people coming to me and saying, "But Bill, my chameleon is still dark and is cold. And so why do I shut off the heat lamp after 2 hours?" And then I was saying, "Well, leave it on for another hour or so." And I can do that. Yeah, yeah, you can do that. Please do that. Do what your chameleon tells you to do. And so I finally had to have a bar that goes gradient. So it just slowly fades into nothing as it goes to the right. And at least that is confusing enough to people that they ask a question. But that was one of the biggest challenges of trying to figure out how to do these care sheets. Amazingly enough, considering everything that's on there, that was interesting. That was my one problem. All right, well, let's see. I have that graph on my, oh, hey, somebody likes my graph. I have the graph on my table. So when I'm not home, the family has an easy reference
Don't
when they
get
check the
cocky
cages.
here, Bill.
What?
We don't want you to get cocky.
Oh, hey,
Um,
give me a moment. All right. Put in a lot of work.
yeah.
Oh, my 15-year-old kid can understand as well as my 50-year-old. But thank you very much. I don't have a name because Facebook doesn't give us names, but I appreciate that feedback. It worked hard on that thing. Now I got to figure out how to communicate. So at 3 o'clock, I have a dripper session to where you can use that to test if your chameleon is hydrated. It's like a backup test. And the question is, because in sometimes I talk about if you really need that to be a hydration session, you turn it into a summer rain shower, in an afternoon rain shower. You can do that. And I talk about how to do it in my videos. It's James. Oh, James Cross. That he's the one that has that printed out. Excellent. Thank you. But so I talk about my videos and YouTube, how to do this summer rain shower in the afternoon and how you start taking the lights down. So you let the chameleon know it's about to get blasted with water. You take the heat down the lights. and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to communicate that in a care sheet? And unless, yeah, okay, so the care sheet becomes what, 16
15
pages?
pages more, another 5 pages just for that.
Before you
Then
know
it's
it,
a clear book.
I've just slipped in. I've just taken the website and I put it onto a care summary, and now you've got a 20-page care
It's a
summary.
cure
I'm
book.
gonna.
You should just put like one of those pictures that has, what is that sends you to a website, and just have that on the care sheet and just have
Well,
it
it's a
go to
QR code.
the QR code. That's right.
That's
Um,
on the front of every one of my
right. And
my
then,
sheets.
but then just nothing else. No other
Oh, okay. And force
details.
them to do
Just a
that.
QR
Mhm.
code. Just the
All
name
right.
of the species and a QR code to take you to the website. I think that would be most efficient.
Okay. All right.
I
Yeah, I
don't think
agree. It
you
allows me to
use
change
that,
things on the
but
fly.
all right. Okay, so do we have any more questions here? Probably not, Tom. All right, we've gotten to about 45 minutes here, Bill. Any other final thoughts on care sheets?
Other than I love them. I love putting them together. Uh, and I love doing the research for them. It just really putting them together really makes you think, because if you have to justify each and every number on there, I mean, if you're just cutting and pasting from others, you don't think about it. But when you're actually doing it from your experience, it really helps you understand what you're doing. So I can't just say, all right, I put my hand under the heat lamp. Okay, that's about a pretty good temperature. Yeah, you can do that, and it can work for however for decades. But when I put together a care summary, I got to put together a number. And so, I mean, just the basking temperature was one of the greatest struggles I had to figure out what I'm going to do for a basking temperature, because the community has traditionally gone very hot with basking temperatures. But now we're learning about veiled chameleons. They need it much cooler, or else they supercharge. They create clutches of 100 eggs, which is not healthy for them. And so, how do you roll that back, but not too far back to where we're not giving the chameleon enough heat? So it's an amazing exercise to really challenge every single component of husbandry that you thought you knew. Uh, it's exhausting, but it's fun. Once you're done with the care sheet, you know what you're talking about.
So let me summarize. So the care sheet, finding a care sheet, you need to find an author. Ideally, you find an author who's a podcaster who challenges themselves for years. You use the care sheet as a starter. You set things up the way the care sheet says. You use only one care sheet. You don't combine a bunch of them until you've got experience, because knowledge without experience is no good. And then you watch your reptile or your exotic pet, and you watch the behaviors, and you see what they tell you, and you go from there. And then you get experience. Is that a
Yeah,
good summary of a care sheet?
I think it is. And when you implement a care sheet and then you watch your chameleons or reptiles behavior, you start to understand the limits of the numbers. And that's once you start learning the limits, what happens when it's too hot, what happens when it's too cold, that's when you start making your understanding your husbandry more than just a two-dimensional thing. It becomes multidimensional. You start, oh, okay, I see that that number is there, but this is when it's too hot, this is when it's too cold. That gives you perspective. We'll say that.
Well, great. All right. Well, I think this has been an excellent show. I hope people watch this and learn something. If you'd like to hear some more from us, let us know what you want to hear about. We're open to talk about anything, especially if it's exotic pet related.
Yeah.
But, we talk about all kinds of stuff. So let us know what you'd like to hear about for the next show, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye, everybody.